Hello and welcome to Safe Space with Natalia podcast. I'm your host, Natalia. I'm an intuitive tarot reader, psychic medium, certified life coach, and Reiki master. I'm so excited for today's episode. Today, I want to talk about spirituality and kind of tie it into, the journey, how it looks like, and what I find to be the true meaning and the true purpose for this all. So I know that for many of us, not all, but for many of us, this journey starts off with like a massive ending of some sort of big life-changing event, whether it's a breakup, whether you lose a job, whether you get sick, whether something else happens. There's some sort of ending that triggers this new beginning, right? And with that, there's so many layers, so many different phases that you go through, because we go through the grieving stage, we go through the old self, new self, we go through the, well, what do we do with our life now? Like, how do we go from here type of thing. And I know I've mentioned this so many times. My big thing was my relationship with my ex, kind of ending it, and then how this magical path unfolded for me. And for a long time, just becoming a reader, being a reader, I feel like I've always been a reader. So to say becoming a reader, it doesn't really resonate with my soul because I feel like I've always been very intuitive. But just actually taking that and doing this work and channeling for people and doing energy work and going through the different phases, there was obviously a point for a long time in which I believed that this purpose, the purpose of this journey was to continuously add something to the list, add something to my book of accomplishments, add something on my skin. Like I felt like it was, oh, now I'm adding layers. Like I'm adding this sweater, I'm adding this coat, I'm adding this jacket, this hat to like protect me, because it feels almost like a lot of the time we make it seem, or the world makes it seem like we have to continue climbing this ladder. We have to continue chasing this high. It's always like, what's next? And then it wasn't until, recently, where I actually saw a video where this was beautifully described. And on top of that, it came through a channel as I recorded one of my podcasts, which, funny story, Spirit wouldn't let me post. So I'm going to save that story for another time because I can't share it yet, but crazy how that works. It wasn't until I channeled that and I was speaking to my friends about it, and I realized, I'm like, okay, I have to share this with the world. So I'm going to share it with you. It took me a while to realize that the whole purpose, first of all, to define the purpose of life that's a very complex question. I feel like there's so many different ways you can describe it or define it, and we all have our magical sentence that fits into that. But specifically, for the healing journey and being on this path, it's not about having to add anything. It's really not. It's quite opposite, actually. It's about stripping and taking off all of these layers, all of these added things that you don't need. And even though they served you for all of your life, you no longer need them. And what I'm talking about is, the conditioning, the limiting beliefs, the borders that are given to us, everything that just no longer serves you. It's about stripping it off, taking it off, and allowing you to return back to home. Like helping you return back to center, which is you. You have always been enough. You've always been loved. You've always had everything that you needed within you. And I mean, I have goosebumps all over my body, and it's incredible because doing this work and being on this journey, And going through it all, going through life and having avoidant and anxious attachment styles, specifically avoidant, because, yeah, I was a runner, and dealing with coming home to my shadow self and really seeing myself as the bigger picture and falling in love with myself unconditionally and finding home within has changed my life forever. It's changed the way not only I feel about myself, but the way that I show up, the way that people talk to me and communicate with me. It's life changing. It's life changing to feel so at peace and so at home within yourself. And I think we should talk about this so much more. It's not that you have to continuously add something, or you have to buy something, or you have to attain some sort of diploma or certificate or anything like that, or some sort of title. No, it's about coming home to you. It's about coming home. It's about fully and utterly, it's like, it almost ties back to the whole concept behind twin flame. If you don't know what a twin flame is, I think like a normal generalized definition for twin flame is, one soul that is split into two, like mirrored souls that are continuously mirroring to each other their unhealed wounds. One of the biggest concepts of the twin flame journey is coming into union with self prior to coming into union with your person. And, it's only through that journey where I was able to really and utterly, and I mean authentically speaking, come home to myself and realize that everything that I was seeking outside of me, I always had within me. And I had to do the work. I had to actively show up. I had to actively bring out and take out all these like parts of me, the parts that I tried to hide for so long, the parts that I tried to run away from for so long. I had to bring them to the surface, do the healing, feel it, the cry, whatever you want to call it, like everything, and come home to me and make peace with all the versions of myself. Because truth be told, nobody's perfect. Nobody is. I mean, the whole term perfect is just, it's overrated, because you're never going to find, two people that are going to think the exact same thing is perfect. Like, you're never going to find all of us thinking that one human being is perfect. We're all very different. We all think very differently. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know if I made sense there. So it's like this concept of trying to attain this perfect image is just, it's just not giving. It's giving very unrealistic. You know what I mean? It's giving very more. I'm so unsatisfied. I always need something else, I always found that I resonated with, never feeling satisfied. It's like I was always constantly chasing something, chasing a high, high, that's not the right word, but I was like chasing this thrill, and obviously this stemmed from my lack of stability, emotional stability growing up. So I only realized this in the last 3 years, doing all of this work, integrating my shadow self, coming home to myself, where I really and truly learned the lesson of being home, being alone. Like when my daughter is with her father, I would spend most of my nights alone and just being with myself. And I really learned how to be still, how to really take the time to get comfortable in my own skin and just spend time with myself and come home and feel like everything that I have is everything, like I don't need anything else, And even when I struggled with not having a lot of money and not being able to even go out or to buy anything nice for me, it was the most profound, it was the hardest lesson. I'm getting so emotional thinking about it. It was the hardest lesson, but I realized that, sometimes life has to take everything away from you, literally everything away from you, in order for you to truly and utterly fall in love and be good with yourself. Because it's when I had everything taken away from me, no money, no close friends like that lived around me, and I have a very complicated relationship with my parents. It was only at that time where I was able to, yes, go through dark periods and cry. And I mean, I went through the darkest times. But it was through that where it made me realize how much more of a person I am than I give myself credit for. And that was one of like the hardest lessons to integrate, because I struggled with self-worthiness all my life. Funny, because they're actually bringing me back to a podcast that I listened to recently. It's an Mylett podcast with Jamie. Go listen to it. It's amazing. Like, it literally changed my life. And they specifically talked about, it's one thing to be confident. It's another thing to feel worthy. How they described it was, you can be the most confident person, but if you struggle with worthiness, there's always going to be a part of you that's going to question, like, am I worthy of this? Do I believe that I deserve this? And that's something that I struggled with all my life. And even though for 3 years now, I've really worked on my self-love, I did end up falling in love with myself. And I love the person that I am, and I'm confident in myself. The one thing that I really struggled with is my worthiness wound. It's like I almost didn't feel worthy enough of it. It's like, yes, I was okay with myself, but when something good happened, it was like, but am I actually deserving of this? Like, am I worthy enough of this? I had to be left with nothing other than what I had in front of me to realize that there is nothing in this world that is bigger than me. Nothing. And because of the amount of time I've had to really process everything that happened in my life, it made me realize just how much we attach our value to money, to possessions, to things, to people. And it was only through losing all of that where I really had to look within and see that there is nothing greater than me. And there's nothing out there that is worth losing this over. Nothing. I am here because I am worthy of this life. I am worthy of, the love that I receive on a day-to-day basis, because I am like the luckiest girl, like, ever since like I got my TikTok. I know I talk about this all the time, but like my TikTok family, and then the beautiful souls that I have in my life. Like, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for this life. And now more than ever, I know that I'm worthy. I'm worthy of this. I'm worthy of this love. And it's such a beautiful place to be, knowing how hard it was for me and how much I've gone through to get here. And even though my life is still, like, from an outsider's perspective, it still is in shambles, I have never been more proud of myself than I am right now. I literally actually talked about this with my sister. There was an incident that happened over the weekend, and it had to do with my ex and her ex-boyfriend. And they're actually friends. Funny how that happens. But they became friends after, the breakups. And they were having a very, very triggering conversation. And because of what she was saying to him, he wanted to, like, hurt her back. So he brought up, like, her family into this, including me, and talked about my relationship with my ex. And he just started spitting out things that obviously he had one side of. And I mean, it was very reasonable. And I sat there with my sister talking about it. And I'm like, you know what? It's so funny, because from an outsider's perspective, if you look down at the situation and you look at the facts, it's almost like the world would lean more on my ex's side just to see from the outsider's perspective of what he is showing, right? That he owns a house, he has a job, he has money, and now he's in a relationship. Whereas me, I I'm like this witch who's a psychic medium and who is on TikTok and had to move back in with her mom and is still single. So it's like from an outsider's perspective, you look at that and you're going to make a judgment, right? You're going to think, well, I mean, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Funny, my ex used to always say that to me. But now I know it's not the case. It's not. Because there's so many more layers to that. There's so many more layers to my current environment. There's so many layers to me as a human being. And that's why it's so important to not judge a book by its cover. Because you can make any sort of assumption, judgment on somebody, but you don't know what it's like. You don't know what they're truly like. You don't know how they are to people, what they do, how they feel, how they act. Nobody knows how my ex is towards me on a day-to-day basis in regards to our daughter. Nobody sees that. They just see what's on the outside. And I'm just happy to be at this place where it's like it no longer affects me, where it like destroys me. And I'm able to just like sit back and be like, that's very interesting. Very fucking interesting. I mean, is it the truth? Hell no, you're missing like 95% of it. But I mean, hey, that's fine by me. You know what I mean? Because I know who I am and I love who I am. And it's like that TikTok song, you know, I know who I am, I love who I am, and I love the mistakes that I make because it's me. It's authentically being me. And why the hell would I want to be anybody else? Like, you know what I mean? Like, she's a vibe and we love it. Anyways, if you're still here, thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free. I highly recommend you check out the Mylett and Jamie podcasts. I will add the title in the description. I don't know if I could link it, but I'll try. I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.